Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar on making the most of social media with me, Tim Wilson, as your host, and our fantastic panel of speakers, Toria Bono, Matt Warren, Penny Cater, Laura Burt, and Sarah Trickey. A little bit about me. I'm the CAS Community Outreach Manager for the Midlands and part of the Southwest. I'm responsible for the regional growth and delivery of the Computing at School Community of Practice programme as part of the National Centre for Computing Education. And this webinar is the latest in our CAS Inspire series, which is a series of resources consisting of live webinars such as this, with expert panelists such as our panelists today, discussing topical computing education matters in which you, the audience, can get involved. CAS Inspire also features podcasts, videos, and careers inspiration webinars all around computing. As you can probably tell from our action-packed lineup, we're not going to waste time in getting started. So I'm going to introduce each of our speakers before they begin. The format of today's event is 10 minutes for each speaker, followed by a Q&A. As you will realize, you are in listen-only mode. So if you have questions or comments for each speaker during the session, please use the question window on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions. My colleague and fellow Community Outreach Manager, Suzanne Cray, is moderating your questions and will be on hand to field questions to the speakers at the end of their 10 minutes. The top of the window on your dashboard also has an orange rectangle, which can be handily expanded or collapsed. Finally, there is a copy of all today's slides to download during the session, and these are available in the handout section, which you will see on the dashboard. And please, if you are tweeting, use the hashtag CASInspire20, and I will share each of the speakers' Twitter handles in the chat. So firstly, let's begin. Our first speaker today is Toria Bono. Toria is going to be talking about the importance of connection and building a strong personal learning network, particularly with a focus on Twitter. Toria has had many roles in the primary sector and currently teaches at Thomas A. Becket Junior School and is a primary evidence lead educator for Durrington Research School. As you will find out in her presentation, Toria really values connecting with other educators and developing a global personal learning network, which is vital for all educators. Toria created the fabulous hashtags Tiny Voice Tuesday and Tiny Voice Tuesday Unites on Twitter to enable this to happen. And Toria has also recently began a podcast called Tiny Voice Talks. It's a keen blogger, but of course, Toria is happiest when she is teaching. But anyway, let's begin. Toria, over to you.
Thank you. Gosh, I feel slightly fraudulent because you set me up as an expert, which is slightly frightening, really. But here we go. So show my screen, and you should now all be able, I've minimized that and I put this up. I'm hoping you're all able to see this. The power of personal learning networks, and I've said on Twitter, because that really is where I've built my personal learning networks. Now, if I'm honest with you, if you'd have spoken to me last year about personal learning network, I wouldn't have had a clue what one was. But Brendan Hyman said that Twitter provides a modern platform for teachers to share, network, gain emotional support, build professional learning communities, and make a contribution to the profession. Now, I knew that people talked about the power of Twitter and the power of connecting with others, but I genuinely had no clue how on earth to do that. I have been on Twitter since 2009. And I didn't really use it properly until January 2020. It has been an incredibly steep learning curve this year to figure out what exactly to do with it. So Twitter, I used to think it was rather like a big party going on, and somehow I was missing the fun. I couldn't figure out, how do I access this? You know, you've got people chatting to people and sharing resources and connecting and going, oh my goodness, you won't believe this happened through Twitter. And I was thinking, well, what am I doing? How am I missing this? This is me. I used to sit fingers poised over the keyboard thinking, okay, I'm going to tweet. But then I just couldn't. I couldn't figure out what to do or what to say. And I was genuinely worried about appearing pretty stupid, really. So I wasn't sure who to follow. Didn't know many people out there who to follow. I knew very, very few people on Twitter. And what I found myself doing was just retweeting. I retweeted for Britain. Someone put something on there, I'd retweet it. I retweeted lots. I actually won quite a few competitions retweeting. Top tip, retweet and you win competitions. But anyway, issue 1, didn't know who to follow. Issue 2, if I put a question out there on Twitter, no one ever answered. And I hated that. I hated the fact that I was asking a question into the ether. So I created a hashtag called Tiny Voice Tuesday. And the concept behind the hashtag was very simple. Someone would ask a question, they'd tag me, they'd put hashtag Tiny Voice Tuesday, and I would put it out there on Twitter and tag people in. There was a minor issue with that, mind you. I didn't really know anyone. That was my minor issue. This was the idea. But as you can see here, I was getting to know people and I was thinking, well, okay, it's an early years question, I'll ask them. So that's what I did, and people would answer. And I thought, great, this is wonderful. So actually people who weren't asking questions were getting answers. And I thought, well, how can I improve it? How can I improve it so that they get better answers from better people who are in their field? So I created the TVT tag team. And I have over 300 people on the tag team now, and we cover questions from early years right up to higher education, sociology, psychology, reading with pleasure. Coverage is wide, but when people put out the Tiny Voice Tuesday question, it gets answered. One of the questions I was asked though was, well, how can we create a community where people actually are connecting? Because lots of people follow on Twitter but don't see the value of connection, and connection is vital. You know, we need as human beings to connect with one another in order to learn and grow. I truly believe that. Again, the following wasn't doing it for me. I was following people, but actually if they're not following me back, there's no connection there. So I created another thing. I created hashtag Tiny Voice Tuesday Unites, which initially met from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, and now meets from midnight to midnight on a Tuesday. So all day Tuesday. And it's a community of people that don't just follow, they connect, they find their voice, they chat, they support each other. And I absolutely love it. I really do. I liken it to a community hall, and you open the door by replying to my tweet, and then you meet a multitude of people. As educators, we can become quite inward looking, and we, you know, as a junior school teacher, I could speak to junior school teachers, or, you know, if you're a primary school teacher, you tend to speak to primary school teachers. But it's about, I believe, in order to improve the life chance of the children we teach, it's about primary teachers talking to secondary, you know, at secondary talking to early years, everyone connecting so that we are really, really supporting those children that are in our classrooms every day. And it's a worldwide network. There are people on there from Japan, Dubai, Canada, England, France, Norway. And it's amazing what you learn from educators outside of your own country. Through all of this, there have been many opportunities that I've been lucky enough to have. I was asked to speak on Global Brew Ed about finding your voice on Twitter. I was then asked to host Morning Brew Ed. I then went on to host my own Brew Ed Find Your Voice with 29 speakers, which was an 8-hour event. I've collaborated with Ivo Hannon in Dubai on Ed Talks Live. I've been asked to be a Global School Alliance Ambassador, and I've created the website Empowering Equity in Education. And as was mentioned at the beginning, I've also got a podcast. And do you know what? None of this could have been done alone. I have the community of people that I've connected with on Twitter to thank for that. And actually, I'm building networks elsewhere. I can't wait to listen to the other speakers, because I really, really, really don't quite get Facebook and Instagram yet, but I'm hoping to. Helen Keller said, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. We truly can. And if you are sitting there and you're not connecting, do it. It is so important, and you will learn immense amounts. So I've got a blog, which I've written loads and loads about my Twitter journey. I've also got a website where the podcasts are, and it would be lovely, so lovely, to connect with you on Twitter. Thank you for listening to me. Bye. Right, now I've got to figure out, everyone, how to transfer back, which could be a minor problem.
Don't worry, I will do it for you. So it's all
Brilliant.
cool. Have we got any questions for Toria?
Just the one. This is from Matthew. He says, "Hi Toria, fascinating, thank you. So is the way to find people through hashtags or finding handles and then looking at who they are following? I'd be interested to know your thoughts."
That's such a good question, actually. I think if you are in certain fields, and I meant to cover this, and I forgot, Matthew, you've really meant, yeah. So if you're in certain fields, you can find hashtags relevant to your fields, and I think they are really, really important to do. So you can, for me, hashtag year 4, perfect. But equally, I think if you join, you get recommendations, but I tend to always check when I'm following people that they have an educational background. I am really careful now. I sort of, I check what their profile says. I check their latest thread. I check their threads. It sounds rather stalkery, actually. I check their threads. I check, who they're following and what they're about, because actually there are some weird and wonderful people out there. And also I do take on recommendations from my Twitter sort of colleagues, who will say, "Oh, follow such and such person, they're fantastic." I hope that answered your question, Matthew.
A couple of other comments from Rachel. She says she hasn't got a question, but just fantastic to hear the story behind the hashtag. Oh, Matthew says, "Brilliant, thanks, Toria, really helpful stuff."
Good job. Really pleased I could help.
I have a question for you, which is, why did you create the Tiny Voice Tuesday Unites hashtag? What was the story behind that? What's the reason behind that?
Well, it was because someone basically said that it would be really nice to have a community in which people that aren't as, fundamentally for me, I just wanted a community where I could chat to people that I was quite shy on Twitter, quite nervous, really worried about people judging me. And there were other people I discovered that were very, very similar. And that's what we did. We created a community where actually a lot of new people come along to find their voice initially, which is why I talk often about finding your voice. It's a community in which there's not really, there isn't any judgment, actually. You can say all sorts of weird and wonderful things and no one goes, "Oh my goodness, what is she on about?" And it's a very easy platform. So something that I often say is, if you join a platform like that, if you just sort of introduce yourself and then share a picture of a quote or share a funny GIF, just something to engage, because actually a lot of people are nervous about that first tweet. And when you get a response to your first tweet, it makes you slightly braver about that second tweet.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Toria, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Great stuff. Right, onto our second speaker. Our second speaker is Matt Warne. In fact, Matt's going to build on a number of the great things that Toria has introduced regarding Twitter. Why use Twitter? How is it useful to you as teachers? And he's also going to share some top tips for implementation. Matt is the head of computing and IT at RGS The Grange in Worcester. Matt is a CAS master teacher and community leader. Also loves robotics and triathlons, but he dislikes iPhone cables, don't we all? And jelly. Anyway, as you will see, Matt loves Twitter, and you will see why he does by the end of his presentation. Matt, over to you.
Thanks, Tim.
Give you access. There you go.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I'm just fighting with the screen to just try and get the presentation up. So hopefully we should be there. Tim, can you just confirm that that I have got my main screen up?
I can see your slides. Okay? Yep, absolutely.
Okay, fine. So, Toria, I've got to be honest. It's nice to actually meet you today. I've been quite inspired by what you've been doing with the sort of the story behind that hashtag. So it's lovely to sort of hear that and your journey. And my journey has been, I suppose, fairly similar actually to you, in the sense that I started in 2009. and very much like you, it was about trying to craft this personal learning network, a term I hadn't really heard of until a few years ago, actually, when I really realized what I was actually doing through Twitter. And so I'm going to go through some really top tips that I hope are going to help people in maybe setting out on their journey with Twitter, really. And we'll start really with the name. I think this is quite important. You can change the name, but it's worth just doing a bit of research and getting something that actually works, that is simple. Mine is just my name, Matt Warne, at Matt Warne is the Twitter handle. I've done that because this is an educational account. I've done it as a teacher who wants to learn from other people. And if people want to find me, it should be fairly easy to find. Just be careful if you do choose a Twitter handle and it's so complicated that no one can ever find it. I have a few friends, teachers who've gone a little bit crazy with their Twitter handles, and it's so hard when you are writing a tweet, you want to tag them in to actually find them, locate them. As Toria rightly said, update your bio, your biography. You haven't got much space to play with there, but it's definitely worth just putting down the key info. Why are you on Twitter? You know, if you're a year 4 teacher, make it really obvious. You're after sort of connections with other year 4 teachers. If you're a computing lead like myself, you know, that is my sort of network. I want to link up with other computer leads, primary practitioners. So that bio is really, really important. And never trust anyone on Twitter who hasn't got a photo. I'm not sure if I actually follow anyone with the original Twitter egg anymore, or if there's anyone still out there. But definitely put a picture, add that little bit of a personal touch to yours. And that is a good place to start. So let's look at what goes into a tweet. I mean, this is quite hard, isn't it, knowing what to actually tweet about? But I'd say, you know, even the things that you're doing on a daily basis in terms of education, if you are a teacher, I think these things that you want to share, that you want to converse, to actually forge a conversation. I'm constantly asking questions, but I understand it's quite hard to do that until you do have a bit of a network. So it's about trying to find the right Twitter people to follow, and I think this can be done quite easily through certain hashtags. For example, the CAS chat on a Monday for computing, but there's so many, it's worth doing a bit of research yourself. So not many characters to play with. I'm often getting pupils in my school to actually write tweets. It's a way of improving literacy skills, because your word selection has to be absolutely perfect. And I'm constantly editing what I'm writing to try and get my main message across. What are followers' friends tweeting about? I mean, as Toria rightly said, do some research, observe what's going on, follow a few people you know who are doing some you know, making some ripples in Twitter, and follow and see what they're doing and learn sort of what they're doing, but also what angle you want to actually approach this from. What do you actually want to gain from Twitter is the main response. I mean, types of tweets, you've got promotional, you may be promoting your school or something along those lines. You might be retweeting and adding a comment back to someone else's tweet. That's often a popular thing, which I think can really spark some curiosity and some conversation. Polls as well. Not many people use polls, but a lovely little voting tool that is so easy to do. You're definitely going to engage people through polls. Definitely that's sort of conversational, really. I love to have conversations on there, and I want to gain something from it. So just think about what you're doing, and I think images, animated GIFs that are built in, linking in key hashtags are obvious ways of actually getting things to actually trend a little bit more. I've always found these pictures or videos are worth 1,000 words. They can draw people in and actually start a discussion. Terminology mentioned, so I'm writing a tweet. I might sort of, you know, add great session with Toria or the rest of the guys tonight, and I'll actually tag people in. They can retweet it as well. Your feed is your list in Twitter, your personal list. So click on your name, and that will be all the people you follow and what they're actually tweeting or having a conversation about. Hashtag, this is like a short term, really. It's like a sort of a shortcut to a conversation. Don't overdo the hashtags. So I think that's you know, a lesson that we all learn as we come through and we get the best out of these social media platforms. Sometimes less is more. If you want to have a conversation with someone, but you don't want it to be in the realms of the public domain, a DM is a direct message. So that's person to person. No one else can see that, and that's pretty helpful for moving forward in conversations. Likes, it's a good thing to actually see things that you actually like out there, to give someone some feedback, as you probably want when you're pushing things out there as well. A follower, so someone who's actually following you. You're hopefully gaining followers, not just because they're numbers, because they're people who are interested in what you're doing. So just think about what you're tweeting, the reasons you're tweeting it, and the responses you're trying to gain from it. I often reply to lots of people when they post something I'm interested in. It might not be something I agree with. I'd like to find out a little bit more, but just click that reply button, and that will form a thread as part of your conversation. And a retweet, that's probably the easiest place to start. You find something you like, you share it with your followers as well. Key features, lists. This is hugely underused. You can see as a screenshot from my list. I use lists, I build lists because I've got a number of followers, but if I was just to go through on a daily basis everybody's tweets, that is a full-time job in itself, on the sideline of teaching. So I make lists based on, you can see I'm an Apple Distinguished Educator, so I've got a lot of the ADEs. I've literally just put them in a group. When I click on that list, I can just see what they're tweeting about at that time, if there's something of interest. I've got a list of my, my favorite go-to computer links, teachers who are doing some great things. When I want a bit of inspiration, I can push something out to them, but predominantly find out what they're doing at the same time by just following their list. So lists are absolutely fantastic and very underused. I'm more than happy to talk about this another time when I've got a little bit more time after. Bookmarks, I'm often doing this. I find a tweet, I think, oh, that's great. I've just not got a minute to actually respond to it. So if you just click on the actual, you can see I've just screenshotted this. You can click on the little link underneath and add tweets to bookmarks. And in your bookmarks will be like your favorite tweets you don't have time to respond to at that time, but you can go back to. And that is really, really important, especially, in this current stage where we're fighting with screen time and trying to just get downtime. So often I'll bookmark things, turn my phone off, put it away, come back to that another time when I'm more proactive. So bookmarks are definitely something that you want to get involved with. In terms of building a network, this is on my wall in my classroom at the moment. I started off with not many followers, not many directions. It's not about followers, it's about quality of the number of followers and what you're doing. I can turn to these guys, they're across the globe on a daily basis, actually, ask questions, learn from them. And it's also that positivity as well, sharing best practice, and liking what they're posting, because there's some good stuff going on out there. I was out in South Africa in March, very lucky to have that opportunity in this current climate. I went out there through links on Twitter as a computing lead to lead a conference, and I led a whole part of the conference on building a community. I set up a hashtag, and this is some of the responses that I actually gained from it. The question was sort of, why are you using Twitter? What as a teacher do you get from this? Here's my friend, actually, he's Danish. He's sort of saying only 5 to 6% of people connections are from his country. So having that global link is so powerful. We're able to do that where there's no other way of doing that. So Twitter is huge for that tool. My colleague John Jones, World of Contacts, the best professional development on the planet. Escaping echo chambers and broadening perspectives. I think that's pretty relevant at the moment. A safe place to actually ask questions, a little bit like the Tiny Tuesday. You've got a space there where you're going to be listened to and you can actually gain some advice. I think that's so important. I'm sure you've heard of Mark Anderson. He's definitely worth a follow. Best staff room in the world. But again, it's finding these people to follow who are really good sharers, and will actually give you something to add to your network. You'll have this presentation. If you want to do something to follow up this with staff, scan that, use that, and you'll have all the actual answers from that as well. Mark also shared this about accessing resources, professional dialogue, current affairs. It's about broadening horizons, really. And there's some really valid points as to why this is his go-to tool, as well as mine and the other people online tonight. So this is kind of, my go-to really for building that PLN. Give credit. You know, if you want credit, you've got to give credit. And I think that's so important. Be positive, be a role model on social media, because by goodness, don't our children need us at the moment. You know, share things. You might not think it's relevant, but actually what you share might really help someone out of a sticky situation. You know, inspire a community, like so many other people on this network are actually doing tonight. You know, retweet, see things, share them. I think that's really nice to pass them on to other people as well and collaborate. We're in this together, aren't we? As teachers, we're always trying to do the best for our pupils, and Twitter allows us to expand our classroom. CLC Simon, he's also definitely worth a follow. Here's some really good points from him. If you follow him, you'll pick up lots of these different things. You've got the slide deck, but there's some good tips about growing that PLN as well. And steps to success, don't be afraid to host the chat. You know, it might be point 6 here. I'm hosting the Apple EDU chat on Tuesday, so if anyone's keen, I'd love you to join us. We're talking about co-clubs, something that is close to Tim's heart as well. So it's about trying to find those hashtags, those Twitter chats that are actually valid and definitely worth following. So I will end with Q&A. I'm just over 10 minutes. So I'm just wondering then, Tim, if I can swiftly share this screen or send it back to you.
Don't worry, I'll sort that out. I'm gonna pass this over to Penny, so she can get set up in a moment. Thank you so much. Great. Suzanne, questions, what do we have?
Apologies, I've lost my screen. Hang on. Okay. Okay, so just a quick question. Will all of the people's Twitter handles be sent out? I guess that's something that we could put in the chat, if you're happy to do that. But secondly, somebody says, Matthew says, we have a school Twitter account and my head wants to set up teacher accounts for staff too. Should we use the school main handle and add an extension? For example, if @HappySchool is the main school account and teachers could be @HappySchool Year 1, @HappySchool Year 2. Any advice, please?
I think this is a really good question. Toria, I'm probably going to lean on you in a little bit, and we'll try and double team this one. I know I'm sort of pretty active with our school Twitter account, and I think that's really important. There's a lot of times I'll retweet our school Twitter feeds. I think from a personal perspective, I think it's very important that you have your own identity on there as well. I don't know, I personally, now this is my opinion, I'd be a little bit concerned that what I was posting, not that it's ever going to be sort of, I don't know, negatively received. I'm obviously very cautious about what I post, but I kind of want to have my own identity in social media, especially on Twitter. Toria, I'm sending this over to you, if that's all right, Tim. What's your sort of perspective on this?
It's very similar to yours, actually. If I'm thinking longevity, if I have linked my account to my school and then I move to a different school, what happens to that account? Actually, I want to ensure that I don't lose all my connections, which I would do if that account needs to close and a new account open. I think it's really important to have your own personal identity on there. And I really liked what you said, Matt, as well, about the having a picture, a real picture of you. And similar to you, I have a real picture and I have a real name. And I think it's important, if you're using Twitter for professional purposes, to have your own identity. That doesn't mean that you aren't supporting your school. Similar to you, I retweet my school a lot, and I do lots of those sort of things, but I have my own personal identity.
I think it's very important to have the human being, as you're right. I think Matthew's actually responded to this, hasn't he, Suzanne? I think.
Yeah, so he says, excellent advice about identity, Matt. Thanks, Toria. Longevity and moving school, interesting point. Means ownership is the teachers and not the school. Brilliant. So that's great.
One more question, I think.
There's one more from Rachel. She says, one of her concerns about Twitter was only finding like-minded people who just reinforce my own views and ideas. How do you suggest finding those who might challenge you to think beyond the obvious? And she says, I guess I'm wondering how to escape echo chambers.
I think this is a really, really good point. And it's something I've been thinking about personally, professionally, recently. If we are only following like-minded people, then we are going to, it's going to reinforce this singular sort of way of thinking. So I suppose I think it's getting involved in those chats, really, because the more people you have in the chats, the more opinions you're going to have. You're not going to agree with everything. We're a civilized society where we can have conversations about things. Don't be afraid to question someone. As long as you do it politely, I don't think people mind at all. If I put a tweet out and someone questioned it, I'd love to. It might just open my, a different way of thinking about something. If it's something really direct, I'd like to sort of DM someone and maybe not publicly have that conversation about something that's really, really, really different. So I think the question is fantastic. That's applicable to every sort of network, social network, and everything in our lives, actually. If we don't have that mixture, that combination of things, how are we ever going to sort of in our own heads get our own personal direction?
Toria?
Sorry, I just wanted to say that actually I actively created a diverse network for myself, because I realized that it was very much me following like-minded individuals. So Tiny Voice Tuesday Nights helped in part, but actually I actively went out and I sought people in, I've got such a diverse network now, but it had to be an active thing. So anyone on Twitter, it has to be active. It's not just going to happen. It won't just evolve.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant advice. And Matt, thank you so much. And Rachel says thank you as well for your responses. So great. Let's move on to our third speaker. I'm delighted to introduce Penny. So Penny Cater is going to show you a number of top tips on how to get the best from Facebook as a teacher, and also why LinkedIn is important to schools and teachers. So a little bit about Penny. Penny is head of faculty for computing, business and technology, and head of computing at Boswell School in Chelmsford. Penny is a STEM ambassador, NCCE CPD facilitator, certified Raspberry Pi educator, amongst many other things. She loves drones, robotics, rockets, and of course, computing. Penny has been teaching for 10 years, and this is her second career after working at PwC in London as a global risk management senior manager for teaching and learning. So as you will see, Penny is very connected, and you will also see why she is in her presentation. Penny, it's all yours.
Thank you. So hopefully you can see my slides.
That's a yes. Absolutely.
Yes. Good. Okay. So just one of the roles that I used to do was actually to do networking, but with face-to-face networking in the company that I used to work for. And what I found is quite a lot of those skills actually come into place when you're looking at the social media sites. So first of all, we're going to look at Facebook. And I'm trying to pick out some of the key things, really. Now, one of the things I would talk about with regard to Facebook is that you need to decide how you want to use it. If you're quite active on Facebook as a yourself, and you post things and you share things with families and things like that, then what I would advise is actually that you potentially create another profile for yourself that's more of an education one, a bit like you do on Twitter, really. So some of the things on Facebook that I find really useful is mainly the Facebook groups. I don't tend to use Facebook a lot for private things. I made sure that obviously the privacy settings were set correctly, because obviously you can have people that friend you and things like that. But the most important thing, I think, is really the Facebook groups, and I found these really valuable. So what you'll see in the middle, I've just picked out one because obviously I teach computing, also teach IT. So the information technology, there is a group that you can join. These are private groups that are run, and you have to be allowed in to join them. If you'll see sort of in the middle of the screen the options that you get. So you've got an about section in the group, you've got a discussion, you've got rooms, members, events, media and files. Now I use the media and files quite a lot, and also the discussion. The main things that I use them for So for example, there's been a lot of chat recently about what's happened with COVID and if the Cambridge Nationals are going to go ahead. And some people actually post some really relevant things. And in the media section, you will see that they actually have screenshot some of the responses that they've had from the OCR exam board when people have been questioning what they're doing with some of the coursework and things. So people share an awful lot of information. The files are very good as well. If you go to the file section, you can also download resources that people share. So instead of having to go backwards and forwards and things, you've got everything in this one group and anybody can share information. There's an awful lot of really good resources, revision resources that are in there, and therefore each particular group. So as you'll see on the left-hand side of the screen, I've put a selection of the groups I joined. There is an awful lot of groups. So initially what I would suggest is that you try to select the groups that you really want to join in. I've joined quite a lot, but it's really up to you. With regard to sort of teaching computer science, I've joined AQA and OCR because I think it gives you a really good perspective of exam boards and what people are doing. So that's what I would suggest with regard to Facebook groups. Here's some of the reasons why I really value Facebook. These are some of the discussions. Now, what you'll see is that people can reply, same bit like Twitter really. You can like a comment, you can reply. If you want to post, you can add to your post, and there's a selection of things that you can do there. You can tag other people. So if you've got a colleague that's in the same group and you think, oh, that's really good. And in fact, just before I came on, I was looking at Facebook groups, and there's a really good link to some videos. So I've tagged in one of my colleagues. So that's a really good way of sort of spreading the knowledge. One of the things that can happen with all social media platforms, I think, is that you can get lost in the information. There is an awful lot of information on the Facebook groups. So some things that I've picked out that you see that I've circled is that you can actually put the word following in so that you're following a thread to see what actually happens and what people post. But what you can do is you can like certain things, and then what you can do is go back and you can see what you've liked, and then that's easy to find again. So that's a little bit about Facebook. So these are my top tips really. So decide on how you want to use it. Create a different profile, an alternative profile if you use Facebook a lot personally. Join relevant groups, manage your notification settings, because as I said, there's a lot of data. So what you want to make sure is that you don't get pinged all the time with all your notifications from each of the groups, because that can get quite annoying. Follow relevant posts or you won't be able to find it again. So really they're my Facebook top tips. Okay, so just moving on then to LinkedIn. Now I know LinkedIn, some people really like it or hate it. It seems to be a bit like Marmite. Now, the reason I really like LinkedIn is because I also run lots of STEM clubs. And what I found over the last few years, that actually LinkedIn has really helped to connect with companies and find out what's happening with them, and maybe some links of getting trips, getting people to speak at the school and things like that. So you make yourself a profile. The profile that you make is, you have to decide whether it's personal or business. Now, I've always gone along the sort of business route. So you put down where you've gone. You can hide or you can show anything. So it's entirely up to you what you want to share. I did get permission, obviously, from this person to share this, Rob Bennett. He has 6,000 followers on LinkedIn. He's a really good person to look at to see actually how he uses LinkedIn. What he does, he links it to using the to business addresses and business contacts. And then what you can use is you can actually, from LinkedIn, you can put your LinkedIn into your Twitter feed. So that actually works really well as well. You have to be careful who you want to see your post. So if you look in the bottom right, you'll be able to see that you can have anyone. You can have anyone, and you can also choose your Twitter handle as well, so that it automatically posts when you post in there. it works quite well in some instances. In some, it gets a bit annoying, and people can get a bit annoyed on Twitter with that because all they see is lots of LinkedIn feeds. One of the other things with LinkedIn I think is really key is your interest. So if you see at the bottom of the slide, there is one of the interests that I've got is women in project management, and I can follow that group of people and actually find out lots of information that's going on in and around different types of project management, what women are doing. There's lots of awards, there's lots of competitions, and I can bring some of that into school, which has been quite useful. So why use LinkedIn? It's another social media platform that you have to do, but for me it was really key to link my school to industry, look at different jobs, careers. Lots of people in universities join there. They have really good discussions, and there's some really key things that they put on, obviously with what's happening at the moment. They update you, they give you lots of information about what's happening. With regard to companies, so you'll see Stuart Whitehead is one that I follow quite a lot because of the manufacturing industry and robotics. He's a really good person to follow. He tweets quite a lot and links a lot to business. So there's a lot of, as I said, breadth and depth of knowledge of different industries. Student success stories. So one of the things I found is that some of my students that I first started teaching sort of 10 years ago have actually now they've got their own careers. They link you in on LinkedIn, and it's actually really good to find out, as an alumni point of view, what they're doing, what was successful for them, because students maybe take different paths than what we thought they would do when they left school. One of the other things, there's lots of courses for teachers and students on there that I then tweet about. So I go onto LinkedIn, find out the information, and then I tweet about them. Have I got my profile on LinkedIn up to where I would like it to be? No, because probably don't spend enough time doing that. One of the other things that you can do on LinkedIn, which is really good, and one of my top tips, is you can endorse people's skills. So for example, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you can endorse some of my skills. So if you think I've done quite well presenting, you can do that today. In other industries, if they're good at project management, you can see one at the bottom. Obviously, I've put Rob's on there. So if I thought he was good at marketing strategy or business strategy, things like that, then I could endorse some of his skills. That goes quite a long way when you're looking at maybe not that you would, but maybe potential career moves, talking to students about CVs. This can create you a really good, strong profile. I'm quite conscious of time, so I will leave it there, but main thing, be active, connect with like-minded people, create yourself a really strong profile and try and get some skill endorsements. Okay, thank you.
Very good stuff. I was particularly taken. I always say there's a lot of synergies, as you say, between LinkedIn and Twitter.
Yes.
A lot of what I do links to business in the industry. Is you meet people on LinkedIn, then go and find them on Twitter and follow them, and that's really, really powerful as a means of meeting people as well. Any questions, Suzanne?
Just a couple. Okay, firstly, one from Rachel. Going back to Facebook, Penny, if anyone can share stuff on Facebook, is there a lot of less worthwhile stuff then to sift through, she says?
Yes, basically, there is a lot of information, and that's one of the things that you really have to get your head around. So it's quite worthwhile just picking one group to start with. Also, it's a bit like how can I say? It's a bit like having a cup of tea. There are some cups of teas you really like, and some cups of teas that you don't. So you get to know some people. Some people can be a little bit annoying. It's really good if you try and post something on there, or maybe share something as well. So I would suggest that you just choose one group to start with and then try and see how things work. But yes, it can be quite arduous. But there's some really, really good resources on there. But it is sifting through. It's a bit like Twitter and all the other platforms. There's so much out there at the moment. It's really difficult to try and find what you're looking for, but you can do. And also, if you link up with somebody or a colleague as well, and they're in the same group, then you tend to find something that may be quite relevant to you.
I should add to that actually that one of the most powerful things about Facebook groups is actually the search function. So if nothing else, rather than scrolling down the day or the day's 120 posts that might be in one group at one particular time, you can search by particular topic area, which is very good when you're doing computing related or STEM related stuff as well. So yeah, any more questions? Thank you.
Okay. This is a LinkedIn question from Matthew. He says, should schools set up a LinkedIn page, and what purpose might it serve?
I think it's a really good idea if schools did that, because I think it would give links to industry and companies, and really that's how I use it. There's a lot of industries out there and companies who really want to work with schools, whether that's just doing some conferences, just having a chat with some students, maybe doing some career advice, things like that. I think it could be a really powerful tool. I found it really useful. I run quite a lot of STEM activities, and through them we've got lots of links with manufacturing, construction, and through that computer science as well.
Brilliant. Oh, yeah, we've had one more comment from Matthew, I think.
Interesting links for business. Great point. He says, I hadn't thought of that. Thank you.
Great. Penny, thank you so much. Again, lots and lots of useful insights on Facebook and LinkedIn. And I'm going to take away some stuff on LinkedIn that I wasn't really aware of in terms of how you can link up, especially around using it for students' benefit, which I think is really important. Thank you. Thanks, Penny. Cool. I'm just going to, before I introduce our fourth speaker, I'm just going to make Laura presenter. Laura, do you now have presenter mode? Yes, you do. Cool. Cool. On to our next speaker, Laura. So Laura is going to talk about security and responsible use of social media. So tackling issues such as online reputation, to post or not to post, being mindful of one's online safety, and the balance between online and offline lives. A little bit about Laura. Laura is a former head of ICT, computing and online safety, is a CAS hub leader, trainee teacher mentor, and has had various other guises in education over the years. Outside of education, Laura is a big fan of travel and dogs and swimming. I'm definitely down with the travel and the dogs. Laura, over to you.
Thank you. Right, I'm just checking. Can you all see my screen okay, Tim? Is that all right?
Absolutely, yes.
Lovely. Okay. Right, bear with me a second because I can't see my screen.
No worries.
There we go. Is that right? Can you see my screen and me?
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent, good. Right, so this is where we talk about the kind of the sensible part, if you like, of using all sorts of social media and making sure that you keep something in terms of what we call your professional online reputation, how we keep that safe, how we keep you safe. And there are lots of different things that when you're working in a school, you might not necessarily, it might not be at the top of your thoughts, if you like. So your professional online reputation, it's more common sense than anything else, if I'm honest. I hope that nothing that we talk about today is going to be tricky or is going to be difficult. Most of the things that you're going to see are hopefully common sense and things that you can easily adapt to. Tim, I'm really sorry, I've got a box on my screen and I can't. There we go. There we go. That's better. Right. So there's sorry. There's a website that I've put the links to this at the end, but the UK Safer Internet Centre is very much a really valuable resource through all of this, and I've put a list of useful links for you at the end. So they've quoted that your online reputation is the perception, the estimation, and or the opinion that is formed when you are encountered online. So this could be when someone visits your social networking profile, but it can also be when someone reads a comment you've posted on someone else's profile. also be when someone sees your online photo albums or an image with you in it. We need any instance or reference of you that either you posted out there. So 3 or 4 main points that how people perceive you online, and the other presenters have talked about this a lot, is kind of talked about you know, things that you have posted, but also other things that you're linked to as well. We do have cases as well sometimes of posts by others pretending to be you. That's very rare. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. So an online reputation can affect everyone, and you don't have to be particularly active on social media to have a presence as such. So for example, 23% of unborn babies already have some kind of digital footprint, which is insane. So as they grow older, obviously their digital footprint carries with them. It only takes for something to be posted once. So even if you decide to delete a post, someone can still have taken a screenshot, they can have done something with that post, and it's very, very easy for that post to sort of travel on a journey, if you like, without you necessarily sort of doing anything with it. And the other thing about being in our profession, about being in education, is that there will be, for whatever reason, students, colleagues, parents, and other members of a school community who will actively seek out your profile. Generally speaking, it's for good reasons. They maybe want to hear your opinion, they want to see what you're doing, but occasionally we do have cases of students and parents tracking you down, and it's not necessarily done in the nicest way. So we need to be aware that these things happen, and we need to know how to deal with them appropriately. So if we think very briefly about, we talked about kind of what your online reputation consists of. So just having a look at that list there, for example, so if we talk about photos of you or photos posted by you, we're thinking holiday photos, night out photos, family occasions, weddings, that kind of thing. How much of our personal lives do we want to share with our students and with our school community? Some of you will live in very small communities where actually you play a multiple role. So you might be a teacher, you might also be a parent, you might be a neighbour, and actually you have very different relationships with the people that you are following those different roles with. So sometimes it can be really difficult to judge what you post and who sees it. Also comments that you've made and language that you use. So we need there to think about things like posts regarding maybe your political views or any religious views or things that could not necessarily cause offence, but will suddenly start to get people thinking about who you are and the kind of views that you have. We are, as a profession, obviously, and I think it was Matt mentioned this in his talk, we're trying to be the best that we are. We're trying to be role models. We're thinking about teacher standards, professional standards, and so the kind of things that we post online, they need to be of a certain, not necessarily right or wrong. And again, we'll talk about that in a minute, because what some person feels to be right or correct is different to what other people think is right and correct, and that conversation is possibly for another time. Groups and affiliations that you have. So again, what kind of things do you enjoy doing in your spare time? Do you want everyone to see that? How do you broach that on social media? And also any content that can be linked to you. So we've talked about hashtags. We've talked about how we link in with different groups of people. Remember that other people can see those depending on your things. So in terms of what we post, and again, this is very, very straightforward. Just a bit of a think beforehand. Think about what you're posting, think about who can see you, and think about your social media presence. In terms of, again, your role as an educator and as a professional, pretty much now all schools will have a social media policy. And they'll differ from place to place. So it might be that you've come from one school and you assume that your social media policy is the same in your new school. Not necessarily. So be really proactive about familiarising yourself with policies within your school, because it's really easy to breach those policies if you haven't read it properly and if you've just signed it. And we're all guilty of that. It's a busy time. There's lots going on, and I think often we sign things, we don't necessarily read word for word, but again, as I say, it's very easy to breach those policies if you're not familiar with them. The bottom one, and I didn't know if we would be able to see the participants for this, so I was going to have a good old nosy at you all and kind of see what I thought about your ages, but there will be some of you on here who potentially are of an age where you have still existing a MySpace account or a Bebo account. Students will track you down. They'll find it hilariously funny to do so, but they will try and find you. So again, be aware, be mindful that those things still exist. In terms of being proactive, we've talked about this very briefly already. This year's very, very busy, and I think looking at that list, I'm assuming that a lot of you will be doing a lot of those extra duties. And online safety doesn't necessarily become the first thing that you think about when you walk in the door at whatever time you get to school in the morning, particularly at the moment. So just be aware, have it at the back of your mind that actually online safety and your reputation as a professional is very much reliant on how you conduct yourself and what you do. So we've talked about the policies. Some people will have come into teaching from different professions, and different professions carry different expectations and different responsibilities. Maybe you were allowed to be a bit more vocal in your other profession. Maybe you were allowed to express your views a bit more freely. And again, regardless whether you believe that's right or wrong, again, look at those policies within your setting and find out, how that works for you now. Most of us are not socializing a great deal at the moment, but it's worth having a conversation with those people around you about what they post sort of regarding you. So are you happy that your friends are tagging you in photos from nights out? Are you happy that you've been posted like a wedding photo or something like that? Be confident about having those conversations with people, because we're all comfortable with different things. And there's no right or wrong with this, and that's what makes it quite difficult sometimes, in that we're all comfortable with different levels of exposure, if you like. Again, this has been touched upon, so that the privacy settings in your social media accounts are really, really, really important, and they're all different. So it's a complete minefield of making sure that you know how they work. So Matt talked about your DMs on your Twitter. Make sure that you know who you're talking to, make sure you know who can see your posts, how to block people. Again, just spend a bit of time doing those things. It's really important in your school as well to know who is who and what they do. We tend to, particularly at the minute, be in our bubbles as such, but we tend to have a core group of people that we go to in schools, but it's really important to find out, for example, who's in charge of safeguarding, who do you report an online issue to. There will be people, and part of their role is to help you with online issues, and I don't think it's that new anymore. I think a while ago, who deals with online things, but hopefully going forward there should be people who that's part of what they do. Things like your union rep, if you've got an issue with social media, who's gonna deal with it? How are you gonna approach it? So those things are all really, really important. So just be aware of who in your school does what, and how they can help you out if need be. I'm getting towards the end, but in terms of your offline versus your online lives, many of us combine the two. So we have online presence, we have an offline presence, and we combine and we balance those things really well. Some of us are old enough to remember a time before social media was a thing, but you still had to be, as a professional, mindful of your professionalism outside of the classroom, and you have an element of control about that. If there's an element of your life you don't want present online, then make sure that other people know that too. So again, we talked about those people in perhaps those communities who have multiple roles. It may be that you don't want photos of your children published online, but do other people know that too? So communication is really key in how other people choose to share things about your life, if you like. And finally, the bottom point in there just goes back to what I've kind of touched upon a couple of times. Regardless of your views on privacy, we as members of the teaching community have a commitment and a responsibility to do the right thing and to lead by example. Some of you will be mentors, some of you will be working with trainees. Encourage them to do the right thing as well, because the more we cascade this down and the more we lead by example, hopefully the more confident people will be and the more proactive they will be. And then finally, further advice. So lots of further advice. There are loads of places to go for help. There's a list of things there. I won't read them all out because you can see them all there, but use them. There's some really, really good resources there, both online and downloadable as well. So if you're running a CPD session, for example, you say to someone, listen to this thing today, actually, have a look at that site. And all of them have places that you can go to for help further if you need it. So some really, really good resources there. But as I say, I think overall, it's just common sense. And if you're not comfortable with something or you're not sure about something, be proactive, double check, and lead the way, do the right thing. Thank you very much.
Lead the way and do the right thing. I think I like that. That's a great way to finish your presentation. Thank you very much, Laura. Suzanne, do we have questions?
Yeah, there's a couple of questions. One from me, first of all. Particularly in many school communities, I think teachers do get to know not only their students, but the whole families. They develop relationships, over quite a period of time. Just with safer working practices in mind, just wondered on your thoughts for connecting on social media to students, both ex-students and current students.
Yeah, so again, it's a really tricky one, like you say, because lots of us will have those friendships that actually sort of go over the school classroom setting and all that kind of thing. I think the majority of schools will say, certainly in secondary, not necessarily primary, but secondaries will specify don't befriend students, and it's in those policies. It very much depends what your school policy says. And again, having those conversations with those people. So, if it's your nephew, if it's your auntie saying, actually, I probably shouldn't do that. However, again, there's no right or wrong. It's a really big area for a discussion, probably at another time. I think with my school hat on, I'd probably say no. However, I can see that there will be situations where, of course, you're going to know students online. Of course, you're going to know families. And I think as long as those conversations are had, again, in terms of what's shared and what's posted, just to make everybody aware that actually your job as a professional within that environment, there are things that you have to do and things that you've got to get right.
Thank you, that's great. Yes, a couple of other questions there. So Matthew says, we sign an acceptable use agreement at the beginning of the school year and it comes out again the following year and the following year. Do you have any top tips for drip feeding this kind of stuff to staff? He does say he is responsible for the acceptable use agreement, but it seems to get forgotten.
Yeah, so we Safer Internet Day is a really nice way of kind of saying this is a thing, let's focus on safe use of the internet, not just for staff. I think often there's a focus on the students, which obviously is what it was designed to do. But Safer Internet Day provides a really nice opportunity to say, actually, we can provide help for students, we can provide guidance for staff. Oh, by the way, have you signed the acceptable use policy? Do you know what's in there? Here's some links to some sites. And also we used to do and one of the schools that I worked in, we did like a little a workshop in the evening. The staff could bring their children along if they wanted to as well. And we'd give out some literature, we'd look at some websites together. And it made it more of a community kind of event and not just, there'd be people saying, oh, Safer Internet Day, turn it off for a day, and actually that's not necessarily the way forward. It's about educating people to use it sensibly and to use it appropriately. I think, as you say, the AUP is very much one of those things that you do sign. Maybe if it evolves and if it changes, then to make people aware and say, actually, whole staff email, it's changed. Are you aware that it's changed? If not,
thank you. I know that you have one more question, but I'm kind of mindful of time, so apologies to the people who've asked other questions. We might have time for it at the end, but let's just see how we go on. So I need to move on to our last speaker. Laura, thank you so much. That was brilliant. Remind me, it is Sarah, isn't it? Because I've got it wrong.
Yes. It is, yes, Tim. It's fine. I'm used to it.
Great stuff. So moving on to our final speaker today, Sarah Trickey. Sarah is going to show you how to make the most of Instagram, when and what to post, how to build an audience, and how to build a network, amongst many other things. As you'll see, Sarah is very passionate about learning and education. This comes across in her Instagram profile. Sarah has worked in a wide variety of schools across the country, from Leeds to Milton Keynes to Essex, and has experience in working with staff and students from all backgrounds and walks of life. She currently teaches in Luton as a head of faculty for business, computing and media, and is also a trainee teacher and also the trainee teacher and NQT training and mentor coordinator. She has a master's in education, and from September 2021, she's going to be embarking on an educational doctorate. Fantastic. Sarah believes in education as the passport to the future. And as I said, this passion comes across in her Instagram profile, and I'm really excited about learning about Instagram a bit more. Anyway, Sarah, over to you.
Thank you. Want to check everyone can see my presentation?
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. So I've been an Instagram user for a few years now, but during the lockdown, I was feeling a little bit out of touch with my trainees and my NQTs. And so I developed a new Instagram profile, Teach with Mrs. T, and a supporting blog that goes with that. The website's down in the bottom, just a little shameless plug there. And a Twitter profile that went with it. Now, I know that you've heard about LinkedIn and Twitter already, so I'm just going to talk to you about making the most of Instagram. As a professional, it's quite difficult to make sure you're posting regularly. And the key to Instagram and getting in the algorithms and getting people to see your work, build that audience, build that following, is to have regular posting. So pre-schedule everything. Like Twitter has, if you use Twitter through a web browser, you can use the free platform called Creator Studio, which is from Facebook, but obviously Facebook and Instagram are intrinsically linked now. You can pre-schedule your posts. This, for me, was an absolute game changer. Prior to my Teach with Mrs. T, I had just a Mrs. Trickey one for my students to remind them what lesson of the day they were on during lockdown, what they should be studying now, when it was break time. And so I utilised the skills I'd learned from that to adapt it to my Teach with Mrs. T. So the idea here is I have a 6 a.m., a 12 midday and a 6 p.m. post that goes out on a regular basis. You can then, oh, there we go, I've got to move. Sorry, I'm in a PE office that it's light responsive. I'll just wave around a bit. You can pre-schedule your post to ensure that you can be seen properly through the right audiences. You can also switch to a business account. Great if you're using this for professional reasons, because then you get access to Instagram insights. You see who views your stuff when, what age range they are, their gender, their location, and you can really tailor your posts to meet the needs of those audiences. You can also then upgrade your profile. There's extra little things on there. You can put a contact button on to have your professional email on there. There's also the opportunity to run a paid Instagram ad. Now, they're not very expensive, and you can choose to spend a couple of pounds at max, but it gets your posts, particularly if you're wanting to get engagement, people to react to something, into you can get that into their feeds more quickly. Now, what you can also do is get Instagram verified by applying to be, like, I am a real life person, here's all the proof that I do exist. And your industry will also show on your profile. This makes you easier to find so that you can connect with your audience more quickly. Also, to make your posts more engaging, utilize the free online software, things like Canva or Designer. They make your posts more eye-catching. You can use all sorts of designs, and actually the scrollers will then are more likely to click on your post and read what you've got to put. There's also lots of pre-made and free templates, which are great for those low creativity days, or when you just wanted to post a quote or a question that gets people engaged in what you're writing about. Next, timings and hashtags. Now, I put on this screen, and it is on the handout, these are my regular hashtags that I use. I always put the same hashtags on my posts. I also follow all of these hashtags because the nature of my Teach with Mrs. T account is to provide support primarily for PGC, for trainee teachers, PGCE students, and also NQTs. And so I've gone through and looked at all the things that they like to follow, and also included Edugram. Now, if you put all of those in and Teachers of Instagram, these ones will get you into the teachers' feeds. They're the ones that people mainly follow. But the busiest times are between 6 and 8 a.m. during the week, obviously just before people get to work, or just as they've got to work before they go into lessons, they have a quick scroll through Instagram. And between 8 and 10 a.m. at weekends, people seem to be quite active too. From 6 until 9 during the week is also quite a busy time. And funnily enough, Thursday is quite often the busiest day for engagement and reach. And after that, it's Sunday evening because everyone's just having a chill out, wondering what to do at a low ebb before Monday arrives. Again, as I said before, you should try and aim to post 3 times per day. The general rule of thumb for Instagram is that 3 is the optimum number of posts. You can post more. Some people only post 1, and rather than actually doing what we call a grid post, the standard square photograph that you would put on for people to scroll through, that actually you should focus on your stories more. I'm still getting to grips with stories. They're not really my thing, but every now and again I will put something on there to get interest in, and you tend to find that people will spend more time just sitting through, scrolling through stories and watching what you have to say. And again, as I said before, follow the hashtags that you post with. This will get you to see what other people are posting, and you can look at similar things or potentially adapt something you've seen already. Now, I've talked a little bit about engagement and reach, and the difference between those two things. It is relatively straightforward. So reach is the number of unique people who see your content, and that's improved through the use of hashtags. So if you want more people to see your things, use more hashtags. Engagement is including all clicks, not just comments, likes and shares. So people who actually respond to what you've put rather than just people seeing it. So it's really to raise your engagement will raise your level, as it were, in the Instagram algorithm, because if more people are liking your post, Instagram think more people would like to see your post, and then they put you at the top of the news feeds. So if someone has commented on something that you shared, like their comment and try and reply where you can, even if it's just a thank you or a little smiley face emoji, really quick to do, but that builds the engagement on the post and puts it up in the algorithm. All of this I've been learning through lockdown. I spent more hours than I'd care to count learning about Instagram a little bit more. When it comes to what to post, you want to get high reach and lots of people looking at your work. You want to look at Edugram, Teachers of Instagram, and Teachers Follow Teachers. Instagram is massive with early years and primary school teachers. Lots of pictures about early years play, various sensory areas, classrooms, reading corners, displays. All of these things get people's interest. The highest engagement, in order of engagement on the right there, planners and lists. If you've got your to-do list written out, or you've got an example of what your planner looks like, these get the highest engagement. And if people click on those pictures, they're more likely to see your other ones. They go to your profile, see what else you've got, and they'll see your other posts. Pastel stationery is the next big hitter, and highlighters. People do enjoy looking at other people's stationery, getting stationery envy. I often get asked quite a lot where I get my highlighters from, as opposed to how I would deal with a pedagogical issue. Outfit of the day is the next one. So if you're posting what you're wearing to work, and again, linking back to what Laura's just been talking about, you need to be aware of how much you want to share. Now, my face, my wonderful phys-art that you can see on the screen in front of you, that my profile picture is the same for my Twitter, my LinkedIn, my Instagram. It's my professional photo. This is my face. I'm not concerned about people seeing it. If you Google me without following me, generally speaking, I think the last time I searched my own name, I was a world-class American violinist. I'm not that, and the picture was not me, but I'm relatively difficult to find on a personal level. Professionally, you can see my Twitter, you can see my LinkedIn, and you can see my blog and my Instagram, and I'm happy with that. And I'm careful about what I post, and it is, generally speaking, related to teaching. I might post about reflecting on the week and bring some personal element in there, but it's always related to my job. I don't discuss my family on there. I don't discuss my child in great detail. I might sometimes suggest that this worked with my 4-year-old. I'm going to try it with my year 11s. Sometimes that's a good tactic. But in general, my Instagram does not include my family in there. It's purely about teaching and learning. Practical pedagogical resources come up next as the next favourite thing. And people like to see what you're doing that is time-saving, quick wins that they can easily apply to their own subjects. Now, as Tim said, I'm at the head of computer science, business studies and media studies. So I'm in quite arguably a broad set of subjects there, but they all follow a similar sort of pattern. We have a set template for our learning resources at the school, our lesson presentations, and so I de-brand those things because I'm not posting on behalf of the school, I'm posting on behalf of myself. And whilst the school that I work in is very big and very proactive in us talking on Twitter, tagging the school in, so long as it's positive and education related and on brand, but I don't want to merge my Teach with Mrs. T stuff, which is not my main teaching job, it's a sideline for me, in with where I teach. So I'm very careful to make sure that, generally speaking, those are not visible. And time-lapse videos is the next thing, that are view planning or marking. So with some very carefully constructed elastic bands and various stands for your phone or a selfie stick on a tripod, you can actually video yourself marking or going through something. If you put it on a time lapse, it's a quick short burst of videos for the Instagram audiences, and they go down quite well, and it tends to get lots of engagement in there with people asking questions. The next thing is reposting. If you're not sure what to post, but you've liked something someone else has done, repost it. There's quite a number of apps out there. Repost is my favorite. It's the easiest one to do. It only generally works for people with public profiles. If they have a private profile and you don't follow them, you won't be allowed to copy and share the link. But it enables you to share the image, so the content that they've posted, as well as the comments that they've written and their hashtags, as well as attributing it to the original poster. Also, it's free. It's not one of these ones that has sneaky in-app purchases or now you've done 3, you've got to subscribe. It's absolutely free, and I've been using it for about a year now. And that is a quick whistle-stop tour of Instagram from me. My socials, again, a bit of a plug here, but they're on the screen. I'm more than happy to connect with people on a professional level on any of these platforms. Happy to take questions if there are any. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That was fabulous. I'm taking a lot of things from that. Thank you. I have one question, I think, from Matthew. Is that right, Suzanne?
Yep, just from Matthew. He says, Sarah, great ideas for teachers, but do you see a use for Instagram and parents? He says, my head wants to set up an account.
So yeah, the school that I work at is actually very big on Instagram. We have a social media manager, so that we have an apprentice position here, and that person is responsible for managing our Twitter and our website as well as our Instagram. And we add on there our Instagram posts that are upcoming about school announcements, so our virtual open evening, our tours, any information that they need to have, and it directs students to parents to the school website, and they're done by one person who's responsible for that in the school. I mean, it might be one example I've done. I was looking at embedded systems, and I asked our media technician to come in and take some pictures of my lesson, whilst my year 11 students actually deconstructed, or forcibly took apart my broken television. So I had an old smart TV that had broken. We took it all to pieces and looked at what was inside. So there's lots of photographs of that going on. We called it a computer autopsy. They took pictures and it went on a newsreel on the school website, and the best one was taken for Instagram. That way, you as a member of staff are covered. What I would advise the head teacher to do is to look at ensuring you have one person who's responsible for putting the posts online. It would be irresponsible to have one person and only one person who had the login and password. Obviously, for obvious reasons, we need to maintain our safeguarding of the school and of everybody involved. But one person is the person who posts, and you have an agreed time and hashtags and what it is you're posting. And so that keeps that control, rather than saying to every single teacher in the school, here's our Instagram, post about your lessons. Because what you then haven't got, you need to check which children are in the picture. Have the parents given consent for them to be on social media? Do you need to blur out faces? Have you got to put emojis over their heads? What is visible in the background? That, I mean, I've been very careful. I'm quite happy to tell people at the school that I work at, I'm sat in a PE cupboard at the moment. All you can see loosely in this background over here is a bit of PE timetable, but nothing that brands the school. What is going to show in your pictures that you may not want? It's a really powerful tool. Most of our parents now are, if they're not digital natives, they have migrated to the digital world. And so therefore engaging with them through social media is quite often the quickest way to get parental response and engagement in your school. Hope that answers the question.
Very good. Do you have any final comments from anyone?
Just one from Matthew saying thank you to all the presenters, outstanding stuff.
I'm going to definitely echo that. We got there, everyone. Thank you. 5 fantastic presentations, 5 fantastic speakers: Laura, Matt, Penny, Sarah. Oh, hold on. Just seeing if there's any more comments. Yeah. So yes, Laura. So yes, Laura, Matt, Sarah, Toria, Penny, thank you so much, and Suzanne, thank you so much for manning the questions today. I thought it was an excellent session. Very much. Should we have time to answer? Michael has one question. I'm going to say yes, we can, for Laura. Shall we just a question for Laura from Michael?
Yeah, go on.
He says, how do you stop posting pictures about you? Do teachers have an outside of school life regarding social media?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough one, isn't it? So yes, of course, absolutely they do. And it's all about making sure that those privacy settings are in place so that the people who see you and the people that you have relationships with in your social media are outside of your school life. So it may be lots of us are friends with our colleagues as well. And again, that's a tricky one to get right, because it might be that you're really good friends with someone, but actually they have very different viewpoints to you. They might have very different friendship groups to you. And, you know, do they have links with things that you don't necessarily want to be linked with? So I think privacy settings is key here. Yes, absolutely. You are entitled to, and you should be able to have some sort of social media life outside of your role. But like many of the other speakers have said today, it's separating your work and your personal life, if that's what you want to do. Some people will combine the two and will happily do so, but you know, be proactive about your choices and make sure that your contacts, your groups, what you're sharing is something that you're comfortable with. So yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. I thought I'd yes. Michael, sorry for that. I'm very glad that Laura has answered your question. So that is it, everyone. As I say, Laura, Matt, Penny, Toria, Sarah, thank you so much. I've learned a great deal today. At the end of the webinar, when it closes, a short survey will appear on your screen, and we would be very grateful if you could take just a minute to complete the survey and say nice things. We like nice things. We'll say things too. Okay, so we have many other sessions coming up in the CAS Inspire series. The next one is next Wednesday at 4 p.m. My colleague Wendy is hosting another fantastic panel to discuss how to produce an effective progression route in primary schools. So basically discussing different approaches to progression and highlighting lots of free resources you can use. And you can book on this and other CAS Inspires right up to Christmas on the Community at School events page. Okay, that's it for the session. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to Suzanne. And I look forward to seeing you at a future event. Bye-bye for now. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.